Today I'm going to show you how to use buses inside of your DAW to route and process groups of audio.
True Sound Studios is in your ears.
Hey guys, what is up? It is Weezna. As always, we are here in my studio, True Sound Studios, and today I want to show you guys and talk about how to bus audio inside of your DAW. Now, I really rely on using a bus, for example, a drum bus, to take my kick, my snare, the toms, the cymbals, and essentially I'm grouping that all together and sending it just to my drum bus. And this way I can process all those drums together as one track. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not going to process my kick, snare, toms, and all that stuff separately, but the output of it is then going to run into my input of my drum bus, and then the output of my drum bus then finally goes to my master output. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start off with is drums. That's the first thing I generally like to process. Kind of sets the, the tone, the feeling for the track. So this is with no effects. Nothing too fancy. I just made this beat very simply for this video, so it's not going to be anything too crazy. Okay, so I'm going to drag up our console view. So here is all of our tracks. So over here, we have the hi-hats, the kick, and the snare. Just very simple. By default, everything is just sent to the master. But today we're going to show you how to use buses. So you always will have a master bus because this essentially everything is still going to go through the master bus, but it's just going to be routed differently. So we have our master, we have our metronome, we have our drum bus, we have our parallel compression drum bus, and I'll explain more of that later. Our piano and synth bus, our bass bus, our main vocal bus, our reverb bus, and then also our drum room bus. So what we're going to do is now down here in our output, instead of running this to master, we are going to click on our drums. So it's routing to right here. So, and then the kick will also go to drums, and our snare will also go to drums. So now if we play this, you can see all of our drums are coming over here. So what's happening is the drums are leaving here, it's coming into our drum bus, and then it's coming out, and then it's coming into our master bus here. So everything is still going to come into the master bus, but we're going to be able to process it in more chunks of audio. So let me show you what I did with the processing on our drum bus. So I have a bus compressor, I have a tape emulator, and I have a tube drive. So let's first start off with engaging the bus compressor. So as you can see, when that drum bus compressor is on, it really helps tighten up those drums. You can really control the amount of low end, sustain, how much attack. I won't get into too much about that because this is more just about how to route things to kind of make them better. But because now all of your drums come into a drum bus, you process them all together. Now, it doesn't mean you can't still individually process your kick, snare, and hi-hat, but it just kind of lets you overall process all your drums together. So the next we will add tape emulation, which I typically do on most drums. Then take it off. And on. Kind of takes away some of that brightness. It adds that tape warmth that people really like, including me. Anyway, so down here we have our tube drive. Now listen to what this does. This kind of makes the drum sound fun. So it's adding some grit, it's adding some distortion, what a lot of people would call it, to our drums. The next thing we're going to do though is called parallel compression. And this is where essentially we're going to really beat up our drum sound. So what I did is I used this send, and it says P comp here. And all I did was, so if I take this away, I want to take all my drums that are coming in through right here, and I want to route these also, essentially making a copy to come over here. Now there's other ways to do it, but I like doing it like this. Just simply coming to here and go P comp, and now I'm sending all of my drums, and it's going to come right over here. So now if I unmute this and I solo this, all of our drums now are going to also be coming through here. So we're going to open up the processing for the parallel compression track, and then if we play this, you can see we are really compressing these drums. Took out a whole bunch of mid-range. And really, I'm really trying to like essentially screw up the drums, and we're going to add this back into our main drum sound. If I take these plugins off, it's the same drum sound as we had over here. So if we engage both of these though, so I'm doing, ton of compression, 21 ratio, sucking out all the mid-range. And now what we're going to do is we're going to bring back in our main drum sound and our parallel compression drum sound. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on and off, and you're going to hear how much the parallel compression helps with the drums. So that's off and then on. So that is what is really cool about bussing things, is you can take advantage of doing things like this and make it really very easy. So the one last thing on our drums here though is going to be our drum room sound. Now I always like to make some sort of drum room. I think what a lot of people would just call it like reverb. So I'm using True Verb. You can use any reverb you want, but I'm really trying to create like a drum room sound. Okay, so I'm going to solo and unsolo our drum room sound. So that's the drum room, which is right down here. So we are routing this differently though. So what I've done here, let me just start all over with these just to show you. What I'm doing is on the kick and snare channel, these two channels right here, I'm sending a separate send. So this is not the same as sending it down here, because I want to have control of how much drum room sound I send over to this drum room bus. So what I'm going to do is click on here. I'm going to come down here, and here's my drum room sound. So now I'm able to control how much signal I'm going to send over to that reverb sound, that drum room sound. So I can pull this down and take less away or add more. And then I'm just going to very simply do the same thing for the snare. It was pretty much even. So that's a cool way of just, adding some life to, kind of stagnant pre-programmed drum sound. And so now we have our piano and our arpeggio, or arpeg as I like to abbreviate it. With these two tracks, as we have them solo now, these are MIDI tracks. So this is a little different. This is actually our MIDI. This is MIDI, and this is the audio, and that is audio. So coming down here, I have selected the piano and synth bus, and then same thing for the arpeggio, the piano and synth bus. So now what's going to happen is these signals are going to come through this bus, our piano and synth bus. So as you can see, our synth and piano and whatever are just coming through this bus. Now what this allows us to do is add a bus compressor or some type of compressor. Now I like to use the Puke Child from Waves. I really think this is a fun compressor to use, and it adds some great character. But this is just doing some light compression on the keys and the arpeggio. As you can see, we're only getting about 2 decibels of reduction. Take it off. Not too much going on there, just a little bit more control, just because the piano does have a good amount of attack to it. And that's really all I did for the piano and synth. It doesn't really it doesn't really generally need too much processing in my opinion. And then we're going to come down to the vocals. Now the vocals is probably where I do the most amount of bussing because depending on how many tracks and what I'm trying to do, I really like the bus. So I have this vocal.
All we are is everything we want to be.
It's got like a fun effect on it, but we won't get into that on this video at least. Let me get rid of this also because I want to start this from scratch to try to make this as easy as possible for you guys. So down here, once again, by default, they're almost always routed as master unless you have changed that. So this time over here, we have vocal main. Now, this is also going to be for all the vocals for this, but you could create separate buses for background vocals, for auxiliary vocals, for whatever. So vocal main, we want to route all of our vocals here. So once again, we just come down here and we go to vocal main. And for our second vocal track, same thing, vocal main. So now if I just play these.
All we are is everything we want to be.
So we have all of our vocals now coming over to our vocal bus. So here is once again, I'm using the Puke Child again, just kind of like this compressor. So let's see what this is doing. I'm going to reset this a little bit.
All we are is everything we want to be.
So really with this compressor, I'm really just trying to overall help correct some of the dynamic range issues, things going on during this vocal. And I'm just very simply using the Puke Child or any compressor to just help smooth it out a little bit more. Now, one more thing we can do is we can send this to our reverb. Now, reverb, or I assume that's how you pronounce it, is Cakewalk's reverb. So I'll pull this up here. And right now I just have it on a Hall setting. Turn the dry all the way down because we only want to hear just the reverb and we don't want to add any more signal to this. And I turned the time down to about 1 second. That's really the only thing I did besides add an EQ, and I started rolling it off around 4K to get rid of some of the brightness on the reverb. So now we can add some reverb to our vocal.
All we are is everything we want to be.
For the most part, that is how I route everything. So you want to make sure your level output is, somewhere in between -7 and -5. It's a really great place to start.
All we are is everything we want to be.
Okay, so that's pretty close, 4.8. So we could reduce this a little bit to get the ideal level we want. But the master output, try to keep this in between -7 and -5 decibels. This is going to come in extremely handy, and it's going to be really useful when it comes to mastering, whether you send it off to get it mastered somewhere else or you're going to be mastering it. It's a really good, just a good practice to keep it in between -5 and -7 decibels. So with this, obviously, you can route everything. There's no bass in here. You could also create a bass bus. You could do it for like synth leads to process those separately, background vocals. But the whole point is routing your individual tracks to buses so that you essentially you have like certain chunks of audio that are going to come into a bus, and you can once again process these just a little bit more until they ultimately get to your main output. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you want to stay up to date with True Sound Studios on a day-to-day basis, follow us on our Instagram page. I post on Instagram every single day, and I'll keep you guys up to date with everything that's going on with the studio. If you're new to our YouTube channel and you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more content. You can also listen to or purchase any of the beats that I personally make right here at True Sound Studios on our SoundCloud page, True Sound on the Beat. You can find all the links in the description below this video. So once again, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'm Ryan Weezna. We're here at my studio, True Sound Studios, and True Sound Studios is in your ears.